words of inspiration and love. Oh, how we live and what we say, it's Stampin' Up and it's our way.
Hey everyone, it's Pauline from Stamp with Pauline, and today I am looking at the kit Enjoy the Ride. It's got 3 layouts in it. It's from the Close to My Heart. So if you're a Close to My Heart demonstrator, you may have already heard that they are closing, and Stampin' Up have offered some supplies, and I randomly didn't know that I was actually on their database. I haven't bought from them in years, but I did buy their storage units when we used to do Project Life from the Becky Higgins range that we used to have, and I'm still on their database, and I was able to purchase this workshop. It's a scrapbooking kit. And what you can do in here, so they've got Project 1, Project 2 and Project 3. And what it's got in this PDF is all of the things that you need to do to create the layouts. So it's got here symbols here: cut, use the back of the paper, cut diagonally, which is angle the trimmer, and it's got little indications here, and all the pieces of designer series paper are labeled in numbers, so you can go ahead and create the exact same layouts. Now I haven't got my photos printed yet, but that is something I will be doing. But what you do is, it says, like for Project 1, you've got these portrait or landscape options here, and then Project 2, it tells you how many of the gathering of the photos that you need. So for Project 1, you need 1 3x4 photo in landscape, 2 4x4 photos, and 4x6. You need 2 of those, and they are to be in a portrait, so portrait or landscape, okay? For project number 2, you need 4 3x3s and 2 4x6 photos in portrait. And then you need, for project 3, 3 in landscape design of 3x4, and you need 2 of 4x6s in portrait. So what you then do is gather up all your supplies, you trim your zip strips. This is what they're calling a zip strip, and that's a 1D, 1L and 2C. So you actually are given, and I'll just go along here a little bit, so you're actually given all of the measurements of the designer series paper that you need to have, and this one obviously has an asterisk because you want to use the back side of this photo, and again 1H, 1A, and it says 3 inches by 12 inches for all of the measurements along here. And then when you get to this part here, this is actually what the layout looks like, and then you get the assembly, and it says using the French vanilla base cardstock is the base page. You're attaching designer series paper 1A, followed by the 1B, followed by the 1C, which is here, and then you attach the 1D. So it actually has a little tip here. It says tip 1C is next to the 1B, so you've got a little strip coming along here. Then it's got here attach 1E to 1F with foam mounting tape. Tip: do not use adhesive along the tops so the other pieces can be tucked in behind them at a later step. So obviously we're tucking these little labels in, or things a bit later on. Attach the photos, embellish with stickers, die cuts, dots. Attach a few of these embellishments with 3D foam tape, and for added dimension, tuck in some die cuts slightly behind the tops of 1E and 1F as shown, and then you've completed the layout. And then it does the same thing again for number 2, and then the 3, and then you've got the other layout here, and then the next one, and so on. So to start off with, what we're going to do is get out our designer series paper. And if you have some designer series paper and you wish to create these layouts, you can actually go right ahead and do that with us. Now in the kit, when you open it up, I'm really hoping that Stampin' Up continues to do this, because I think this is a nice easy quick way that we can get back into our scrapbooking. I've been scrapbooking for years. I actually did it before I was even a card maker. I started scrapbooking my children when they were little, and then I wanted to use the supplies to then make cards, and that's how I've gone on. So we've got place photo here, and this is a 3x3, and there's a couple of those. Then we've got the 3x4, so there's a couple of those. Then we have our 4x4s, which is here, and then we have our 6x4 here, and there's a couple of those as well. So you also get some embellishments, and then here are some stencils, which we'll be able to use with our ink pads and our blending brushes. So there's leaves on this one, and there's some little clouds on this one. And then you've got in here the designer series paper, and you've got little strips here of that paper, which I'm assuming, going by the instructions that I read, they are our Z strips. So they are 12 inches by 1.5 inch. So you want 2 strips of those to cut off. And then our designer series paper, this one, it's another strip, and we're going to cut that at 9 3/4 by 1/2 inch. Okay, so we've got, did I just say that on the right one? I'm not sure if I even said that on the right one. But let me just check. Yep, that looks like that's it. Okay, so you want 2 strips of designer series paper, 12 inches by 1/2 inch, and then you also want this pattern or another pattern piece, and you're going to have that at 9 3/4 by 1/2 inch. So for the next piece we're going to cut, it's 5 inches by 12 inches. And when we're looking at the front of the orientation here, we can see that we want the sun going this way, and we've got some flowers. So I'm going to cut, and I'm just going to have a look at my picture before I just cut that, because I do want to make sure I'm on the right side. Yep, so it is 5 inches by 12 inches. So I'm going to just cut down here at 5 inches. Alright, so let's just do what is it? Sorry, just 5.5 inches. 5.5 inches by 12 inches. That is our designer series paper, and then the back side of it. So that's that, and then we also need to cut 3.5 inches by 12 inches. So let's again check our layout. And that is doing, I'm assuming, the second page of that one. So cutting that at 3.5 inches by 12 inches. So 3.5 inches by 12 inches. And then here we need 3 inch by 4, and we need 2 of them. So 3 inches just going to grab the other sheet, and I want that to be 3 inches, 3 inches by 4 inches, 1 of those, 2 of those, so 2 3x4s, which is those ones. And then with the orientation this way, we want 2 3/4, and we need 3 of them. So 2 3/4, and then rotate that, and it is by 2 3/4 again. 1, 2, 3, 3 of those. So we should have 2 of our zip strips plus our additional one here. Plus then we've got the large strip of designer series paper, the next size down, the 2 pieces which are 3 by 4, and then 3 3Ms. So that's for the layout number 3. All right, so that is that bit done. Then we turn over here, and just going to pop that out of the way so I know I've cut all of that. So for this card, we need the exclusive paper, it says, and it is 4 inches by 12 inches. And it's got the blue on the back, that one. So this one is not double-sided, and this one is 4 inches. 4 inches by 12. Then when we move down here, we've got the red check designer series paper, and the bikes are on the back. Okay, and so my bike's this way. So I need to cut this at 5.5 inches by 12 inches. So cut the strip off first, which is the little Z strip. Get rid of that out of the way for a sec. And then you will have your 12-inch designer series paper, and we're going to be cutting that at 5.5 inches by 12. So I have 5.5. And then, so that is that strip. And then we also need a 3-inch by 12-inch piece as well. So I'm going to do 3-inch by 12-inch as well, like that. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that blue out of the way so I know I've done that. Then we're going with the yellow. Now, the yellow on this one has got the sunflowers and the flowers on the back. Okay, so we're looking at the front. I don't know if the orientation is mattering. Let's check our layout. And it says it's on layout number 3. And it goes that way, so it doesn't appear to have that orientation there. So what we're going to do is cut this at 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. So 2 3/4, and then 2 3/4, and we need 1, 2, 3, and then a 4th one cut on the diagonal. So let's do 2 3/4, 2 3/4. There's 1, there's 2, 2 3/4, 3. And number 4, and then we're cutting 1 on the angle like so. So I have all of those bits there now. So that's my 3 pieces, and my 4th piece is the diagonal. Now it says to cut 2 3/4 again. But we've got a little strip coming down here. 2B, it says, is 3 3/4 of an inch by 9 3/4 of an inch. So we're going to cut the 3/4 of an inch first. So I'm just going to grab my, what do we need? 3/4 of an inch. So my other ruler on this one, I think might have a bit more markings. Yep, so 3/4 of an inch, done. And then it is 9 3/4. So grab my pencil, 9 3/4, which is just under about 25, 4 and a half, 24 and 3/4 of an inch, centimetres, if you're doing centimetres. So we now have that strip. Then we have to do with our yellow again, this one. We're cutting 2 3/4 again. So 2 3/4 again, and 2 3/4, number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. And then it says here number 3K is also cut diagonally in half, so we're going to just position that again. So there we have our 2 3/4 again, and another one there. And then our last one is 3 inches by 4 inches. So we're going to do 3 inches by 4 inches. And we need 2 of those. So we have 2 3 inch by 4 inch pieces of there as well. Now we're moving on to this paper, and it's not the back of that, not the back of that, not that one, not that one. Looks like it's this one. All right. So again, not a double-sided piece of paper, so we don't need to worry too much about that. We're going to be cutting these 2 3/4. So let's cut 2 3/4 for here, 2 3/4, followed by, we're cutting those 2 3/4 squares. We need 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. 2 3/4, 2, 3, and 4. And then we are cutting it in the diagonal. So there we have that one, and we also need to cut another one in the diagonal as well. So we need 2 of those. Diagonal to diagonal, like so. And then we've got those pieces. Now we need 2 more pieces, 3 inches by 4 inches. So I'm going to cut my 3 inch first, and then I'm cutting my 4 inch by 4 inch. Inch by 4 inch, and then we have 2 of those. Okay, all right, on to the next page. We are just going to pop all of this out of the way for a quick sec. So get all the designer series paper cut up. This will make it a little bit easier and quicker for us to do. And we're going to be using what they call is honey butter cardstock. It's a little bit thin. It's got a light side and a dark side. So what for this one we need to do is cut this at 3 inches by 9 3/4. So I'm going to go 3 inches first, and then 9 3/4. So 9 3/4. Like so. So we have that. Then we need a strip of cardstock, which is 1 1/4 inches. So 1 1/4 inches. And 9 3/4 of an inch. 9 3/4 of an inch. Like so. That's another strip. And then we need 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. So 6 1/4. 6 1/4 which leaves us a strip off to the side, and then 4 1/4, and that is our mats, 4 1/4, and then we've got another section there as well. So we now have our 2 pieces here. Then we're going to move down here to our Seabrook cardstock, and take that sheet, and we're going to cut this one at 3 inches by 4 inches. So 3 inches first, and we need 3 inches by 4 inches, and we need 2 of those. So 2 of those. This one is 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. So I'm going to make it 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, and then it needs to be cut diagonally. So we'll give that a cut as well. Okay, so we've got 2 triangles there. Then we're taking the Seabrook again, and this is going to be 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, and we need 3 of them. 2 3/4 and 2 3/4. 1, 2, and 3. That's that. Then we need to take the rosy red cardstock, and this we're cutting at 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. So 6 1/4 by 4 1/4 and 4 1/4, because we need 2 of those. 4 1/4. Okay, so there's 2 of those. Then we need 1 piece, which is to be cut. So we're going to just use this bit here, and it's going to be cut at 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. So 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. Okay, so we get that. And then we need 3 of these pieces here, which is 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. So we can't use that bit because it's not long enough. So we're going to take another piece here, and we're going 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. So 3 1/4 along, and we need 3 of those. So 3 1/4, 1, 3 1/4, 2, and 3 1/4, 3. So I think this will be really easy to use up your own cardstock and your own designer series paper, and I'm going to try this layout with the, of course, my Stampin' Up things as well. But this is a good way, and you can alternate. Obviously, we know how to rotate the cardstock or the layout. So if you don't want it one way, or you've got different photos, you can obviously manipulate it. All right, so our next cutting is, we need a strip here, which is 3/4 of an inch. So again, 3/4 of an inch, and if you need that in centimeters, it's about 2 centimeters. Okay, and then that it needs to be 9 3/4. So just grab my pencil, and we're going 9 3/4 of an inch, and that's that one. So we have a strip, and then here we need 3 3/4, so 3 by 4, so a 3 inch, 3 inch by 4 inch layout here. So 3 by 4. All right, so 3 by 4 there. Then this one is 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. So 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And it is also cut on the diagonal. Okay, so we've got that. And then this strip here, we are going to now cut that at 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. So 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And we have our additional piece here. And I think that's it. I think we are pretty much good to go. So what I'm going to do now is pop everything into its order. So let me just get all of this out of the way, the rest of the kit. And what I'm going to do is go through and get all of the 2s, all of the 3s and all of the 1s together on how it actually is meant to be. Now you can actually go ahead and use this as your piece. It's also got like measurements here of obviously how far and how wide to come out. So to mount your photo here for this layer, it's going to be 1.5 inches down, across by 2.25 here. And then it's telling you here that there's a 3/4 of an inch gap between your layer of the French vanilla that they're using. So you take your French vanilla and you would come in 3/4 of an inch to place your first piece down here. And then of course when you're mounting your photo, you're going to come in 1.5 inches down 2.25, and that would be the angle because it says there 2 inches. So it's 2 inches here, 2.25 here, and 2.5 here. So it's actually even telling you where to place your photos if you wish to continue it on that option as well. All right, so let's get started on this one. What do I need for layout 1? I need my 2 zip strips of that. So let's gather all of those pieces first. All right, so we've got a zip number 1, zip number 1, so that's number 1D and 1I. Now I'm looking for the 5 inches by 12 inches. So grab my ruler. This is my, 5 inches. So should be my 5-inch one. Oops, hang on, just dropping stuff on the floor. Be right back. All right, so then I have my, this is 1G. This is the 5 inches by 12 inches. Then we have 1B, which is 3.5 inches. This should be my 3.5 inches by 12 inches, which is that one. And then that is number 2. And then 2E is the 3x4s. And these squares are layout number 3. So I'm just going to pop those right over to the side. So there's 3 of those. All right, then we turn over. And we've got the blue paper. All right. All right, so now doing this one, I've got 4 inches by 12 inches for that. And I've just realized I didn't cut this one here, which is the 8 by 10. So I'm going to cut 8 inches, which is exactly what's left on there, by 10 inches. So 10 inches there. Okay, so that's the 8 by 10, which goes onto there, and that's also layout number 1. Then we have the 1H, which is our red check, and that is our 5.5 inches by 12 inches. Then we also have the 3 inches by 12 inches piece, so that is also there. Just put it up that way so you can see it's different. Then we jump up here, and none of these are for layout 1, but layout 2, which is our little yellow. So I'm going to gather out all my yellow bits. So the only one we need for layout 2 is we need the strip of yellow, which is the 3.25 by 9 3/4. Then we also need 2 of the 3 inch by 4 inch. That's for 2. They're both for 2. And the rest all belong to layout number 3. Okay. Then we jump down here, and the two of the large 3x4s, they are for layout number 2, and the rest of that pattern paper goes to layout number 3. Okay. Then we go over to the next page, and we've got the yellow card stock. We need the 2 6x4s for layout 1, and we need the other 2 pieces for layout number 2. Then we move on to the Seabrook, and Seabrook cardstock, there is none for layout 1. 2 of the 3x4s for layout number 2, and then we also have here all of the other Seabrook pieces go onto layout number 3. Now for the Rosy cardstock, for layout number 2, it's the 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. For layout 2 is also the other 4 pieces as well. Then for the lime cardstock, we've got this one, which is the 3/4 inch by 9 3/4 goes for layout number 2. And then we also have the 3x4, that also goes there, and the leftover pieces go layout number 3. And that is all ready to go. All right, I think we're good. It's taking a long time to do this one. I think now that I've sorted out all of these pieces, I think maybe we should just work on one layout at a time, and we can come back later on. I don't like to keep my YouTube channel going too long. I am one of these get out type of people. So yeah, if you want to rewind the video and catch those measurements again for our pages, you can. And then what I'll do is we'll come back, or you can watch the next video. I'll try and post these in consecutive days so that you can actually see how they all come together. But you'll need all of these pieces. I need another piece of the French vanilla because this is a double layout. So I have my two pieces of vanilla, got my 2 strips, I've got my 2 sections of blue, and then we also get with this kit also has, just grab these, they're very, very thin, I will say, not as thick as Stampin' Up! Die cuts or from our Memories and More kits, is very thin cardstock. So we've got or very thin, yeah, it's not quite paper, it's a little bit thicker, and we've got all of the embellishments on here that we then can add with our dimensionals to raise them up and add elements to our layout. So this will be my first layout, so if you want to pop back and watch that or watch the next video, you can, but if you want me to go over, but like I said, I've gone through all the measurements here for one. So if we do one, we've got 5 by 12 in this designer series paper, 3.5 by 12 in the same designer series paper. That's all we're doing for layout 1. Layer 1, scrapbook page layout 1, we've got the piece of blue in 4 by 12 and 8 by 10. Then layout 1, we also have this one. It's a red check and the bicycle. Again, if you're using something different, it doesn't matter. It's 5.5 by 12 and 3 inches by 12. Then also continuing on layout 1, we've got 2 pieces of cardstock in 6 1/4 by 4 1/4. Then in a nothing, and that is it. Okay, so yeah, so if you would like to go ahead, so the only cardstock you'll need is this plus our white for our base card. You'll need your 2 strips, So they are 12 inches by half an inch. So you've got 2 of those as well. And I do believe that's everything you need for layout 1. So let's start with layout 1 and see how we progress with that. So I'll see you on the next video if you want to get all the supplies ready. Okay, bye.
What we love, what we do makes a difference in me and you. All these years of inspiration.